Welcome back, or welcome in if you're new here. I'm Little Red Jam, and for today's game review, we will be talking about Darkway, the murder of King Mir. This indie game, as you could probably guess from the title, is a murder mystery, but it's not a point and click or necessarily a visual novel. It's more of an adventure game. So you are in a 3D world where you are a detective's apprentice. It's a world of dogs, so you're a dog, detective's apprentice. And you're wandering around a sort of medieval town trying to figure out and uncover the murder of King Mir. This game was released on December 19th of 2025 and it is currently $7.99 on Steam. So essentially the game intros with your mentor detective telling you that you've been assigned to this case to uncover who murdered the king. When you spawn in the game, you are at the entrance of a door into the city of Ink, and so begins your adventure. There are several other civilians or dogs around town, and the main loop of the game is that you are going back and forth between those civilians and doing favors for them in order to get them to like you a bit more and open up more information. You're also trying to unlock evidence as you go along, and as you talk to the characters or discover things, you are taking notes in your notebook and trying to track the case and figure out who done it. Now, this is a very lore-rich game, and I think there are aspects of this game where I actually kind of felt like it was more of a lore game rather than a mystery game, and I'll dive into my thoughts and opinions a bit later. But as you're going through the game trying to solve the mystery, you're also uncovering the incredibly deep lore of this world and the dogs in it. There are cults and magical powers and ulterior motives. There's a war that happened that impacted each dog in their own way. So this really goes beyond just you stepping into a crime scene that you're trying to solve. And it really makes you feel like you are diving into this whole other world that makes you feel like you want to keep learning more. I found myself during this game honestly kind of wishing that this was in book version. It's just a really beautiful, you can tell, well-loved world that the developer has created here. And yeah, it made me want to be able to just dig in deeper and learn more and have more information, which I think is a really impressive and beautiful thing for a developer to have done. And I think it speaks to the writing and storytelling that is in this game. I think one of the main qualities of this game is that it really doesn't do any hand holding. Compared to some other murder mystery games, which might feed you the mystery and the answer little by little, as you discover more information and evidence and clues in this game, it's never really outright telling you who the likely culprit is. You really have to gather all of the information and all of the evidence and still then try to come to a conclusion yourself about who you think the culprit is. I don't think I quite discovered or unlocked everything, but I was able to guess who did it. And even then, it wasn't because I felt like I had a clear answer in front of me, but it was because I was able to parse down and rule out who I didn't think did it, characteristics of the likely culprit, and discrepancies in the characters' stories. So if that's something you're looking for, a game where you really have to think on your own and work hard to discover the pieces of information, and even when you have them, then do a little bit more brain work, then this game will be for you. If you're wanting something a little more hands-off that you can just enjoy figuring out the story with each step of the game, then this game might feel a little too high effort, low reward for you. Now, this is a game where you are moving around and having to discover things in the world, and for that, the mechanics aren't really the best. The walking is choppy and slow. The jumping doesn't feel that great. In order to get to certain places, it's pretty difficult and bumpy and not a very smooth movement experience. It's easy to get stuck in a lot of places. So that was one of my bigger qualms for a game that is based on walking around a lot to talk to different people and trying to find hidden places. The movement and mechanics don't feel that great. So if you're not really hooked into the story and mystery aspect, then I think that's going to significantly subtract from the gameplay. I think ultimately, as I was playing this game, I kept finding myself feeling so torn between admiring and appreciating the effort and love that the developer clearly poured into this game against struggling to enjoy what that that effort produced. And I feel bad saying that, but you can kind of see it in the movement mechanics. Like, the world is so beautiful and cool, and there are cool things to discover and so many different characters, but the movement just doesn't feel good. Another thing is that all of the characters are voice acted, which is really cool, but the audio quality and recordings are pretty bad. The volume changes a lot.
If he concealed his identity in the acts, he could have been king.
Though I'm shocked by my own result even.
It sounds like home recorded equipment, and I got to the point where partway through the game, I just turned off the volume to all the dialogue because I found myself rather reading the dialogue to myself. And that was another thing I felt bad about, because it's so clear that the developer and the people they got to help voice act poured so much intention and energy into this, but then the output ultimately just wasn't quality enough for me to enjoy it, and it was actually detracting from my experience of the game. Now, as for the visuals and the art, I do think it was pretty cool. Again, this is another aspect where I was torn, because there are really beautiful and cool parts, but then there are parts where, like, the dogs are all black and white, and granted, having color for them would probably be hard to accomplish with the darkness of the background and scenery, but it made it kind of difficult to distinguish between the different characters, and there's so much variety and vibrancy between breeds of dogs. So while there were more detailed drawings once you got into dialogue with the characters that showed their different breeds and added more depth and personality to the characters, when you're just walking around in the world, they kind of just all look like black and white blobs a little bit, but then the city and world itself is really cool. So that's another piece that, again, just exemplifies my back and forth feelings about this game. And I think ultimately I begrudgingly found myself really wanting to finish the game and figure out who it was, which really just, again, comes full circle about how the story was great and the world was great and it had me hooked in, and I wanted to figure it out and I wanted to find things and discover things. But then I also didn't want that, because the experience of the gameplay just didn't feel like it was as good as it could have been. And I know there are money and time constraints to games and development and delivery, but I think there's a part of me that just feels like this game bit off a little bit more than it could chew, or that it kind of put more effort into trying to do everything a little bit rather than trying to do certain things really well. Like, I think I would have loved to see the time and energy put into the voice acting, into making the movement and jumping and exploration feel a little bit better, since that was such a big part of the game. This game tries to do a lot and falls a little bit short on a lot of those things, whereas it could have potentially focused on a few more critical pieces and done those a lot better, and would have resulted in a more enjoyable gameplay experience. But a lot of the reviews on Steam right now are people who really fell in love with this game and seem to have enjoyed their gameplay experience so much. So I think if you feel like you would enjoy the mystery aspect, where again, it's not holding your hand and you really have to work for the answers and the clues and solving the crime, and you're also interested in a world and story with a lot of deep, rich lore, and you don't care as much about the mechanics, then I do think you could really enjoy this game. If you give this game a try, let me know what you think of it in the comments. I would love to hear some other people's perspectives. And as always, thanks for watching. See y'all next time. Bye.